What we've heard today, which many people expected, was the greatest con job that's ever been put to the Australian public by an Australian politician. Minister Turnbull has done more backflips and somersaults in one day, in one effort, than any politician has done in Australian history, and for this he will always be remembered.
He's arguing, though, that he's not dealing with a blank sheet, that he's having to deal with the Labor mess, that this project was already well out of the gates before he was able to get a handle on it.
Before the election, everyone in the industry knew what the circumstances were with the NBN, with the costings, with the problems with the contractors, and all of the other issues that Minister Turnbull has now claimed has caused his plan to go out the window. The reality is that Minister Turnbull's been misleading the Australian public from day one, and for this he will always carry this shame.
Let's put some of the politics to one side, though. Let me ask you about this. This review proposed a mix of technologies in cities and suburbs rather than this solely fibre to the premises as had been mandated. What effect do you think, in practical terms, is that going to have?
I think that the solution that's been preferred for multi-dwelling units, apartment buildings, is the correct way to go forward whilst we work out how to get fibre or other types of technologies into those buildings. And this has been the approach that has been put ever since the very beginning of this project. And unfortunately, Labor did not listen to advice in this area. So in this area, Minister Turnbull's approach is the correct approach. However, for suburbs, for business parks and other locations where we can get fibre into, we should continue with the fibre rollout, because as was admitted today, what we're looking at now is 30% of Australia having fibre to the premise, about 56% or whatever the figure was, having fibre to the node. And so it's going to create a dual class. You're either going to have fibre in your suburb or not, which means your property values are going to go up.
One of the things that the government has acknowledged today is that its preference to have this option that most Australians would be able to connect to a 25 megabit per second network by 2016. The review's found that that's unrealistic.
Absolutely, but right from the very beginning, we're seeing the coalition's figures aiming for figures that should have been achieved 15 years ago. The reality is, as of January next year, NBN Co were going to turn on gigabit connections over the NBN for people that had access to fibre. What we're going to see now is that the coalition's going to stop that from happening, just so that they can argue that by 2020, whether you've got copper or fibre, you're going to be able to get, in some cases, 100 megabits per second. But the reality is, the facts are that that's not going to be the case, because a lot of the copper in Australia is unknown and it is not going to be suitable. Now, it is very important to stress at this point that yesterday, NBN Co and the government admitted they have not had any discussions or any substantive information from Telstra about the state of the copper network. So that makes the report that was released today, if you dropped it from a 1 metre height, it would bounce 2 metres into the sky.